Welcome to Supposedly. Hey, Jesse.
Oh. Hey, Rue, how you doing?
Living my best life. How are you?
Good, trying to stay dry. We're having a lot of storms right now,
Yeah?
and it's kind of gross outside, and it's one of those days you really want to be inside just doing nothing. But unfortunately, I have a lot of stuff to do today, so
Oh, that sucks.
I won't get to be inside for very long, I don't think. But I don't care. At least I can do the rest of the stuff all lazy-like.
There you go. Is there anything
Yeah.
exciting happening in your world?
No.
Okay.
I wish there was. It's COVID right now still.
Yeah.
So it's not like going out and doing things. Nothing too exciting happening.
Yeah.
It's been kind of a dull week.
That was kind of nice, though. You were pretty stressed out for the last couple weeks, catching up after being sick, so.
That's true. And now I'm finally getting to, level off a little bit. Oh, my God,
That's
my
good.
bed is covered in cat litter. I have a cat litter catching mat, and yet they still track it all over the bed, and I don't know how. There has to be a better way.
You would think. If anyone has created a product and wants to sponsor us that's for cat litter reduction,
We would take it.
we would.
I know we're recording early this week. Why are we doing that?
So Darnell took leave this week for the first time since we've been here. And so so while we are still kind of in COVID, we live in a country which believes in science and has effective leadership. And so things are slowly opening safely. And so we're going to go to Berlin for a couple days and do some socially distanced outside walk aroundy kind of things. Part of the wall is still there. And there's some other things to see. I have a friend who lives there, and we're going to have like a socially distanced picnic.
Nice. That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm still like weirdly nervous, and I think like I've identified that it's because all the media that I take in and all the people that I know pretty much are still stateside where everything's a hot damn mess, that I feel as nervous.
Can confirm.
Yeah, like I feel as nervous as if I were there, and then I remember that like that's not my present situation, and I'm like, okay, I guess maybe it's safe, but like I'm still hesitant. And
I gotta say, you really lucked out as far as having to move to Germany right before all this hit.
For real. Yeah, super grateful about that. But yeah, nope, that's about it. We're heading out tomorrow. He's getting some work done on the car, which is exciting. We needed like new brakes and new everything, and
oh man,
road trip ready.
I gotta do a new tire and an oil change today, and it's gonna be expensive, and that sucks.
Yeah, those hurt. Tires are the worst.
Well, it's a brand new tire too. Well, it's like a brand new car, and then
wait, did you get a new car?
Yeah, like a while ago, when I wrecked the old one.
The blue one?
Yeah, the Prius. I wrecked the Prius.
You did?
Yeah, I'm not
you
very
didn't tell
happy
me
about that.
I'm sorry.
I know, and like it was the best car. So when I was trying to buy a new car, I wanted a new Prius or another Prius.
Yeah.
So I went shopping and no place had them because they hold their value so well that people just drive them forever.
Damn.
So I ended up getting a different one. I'm not going to say what kind because I feel like I'll tell you later.
Yeah. No, I didn't realize that. That sucks.
Oh, it sucked. But good news is I paid off the Prius yesterday.
Hey-o.
I had been paying on it for a couple of months past when it was wrecked.
Yeah, so, that sucks.
And I bought gap insurance with the new car.
Nice.
Which I learned, unfortunately, is a great thing to have.
Yeah. Darnell was in a similar situation. Being from New York, he didn't learn to drive until later in life. And he learned to drive in Texas and then moved to Missouri and did not necessarily believe people when they were like, yeah, ICE will fuck your shit. And he was like, no, it'll be fine. And then his shit got fucked. And he was like, oh, you were right.
How old was he when he learned how to drive?
It was when he joined the Army, and he's been in for 6 going on 7. I think he was like 23.
Oh, hey! Tell him he's the only person I've ever met that learned to drive later in life than I did. And I'm really happy to now know someone who was older than me.
Yeah.
When they learned to drive. I didn't get my license till I was 19.
Okay.
I was already living on my own. I was working. I was walking to work every day. I've lived on my own since I was 17. So,
I got my license literally that day.
I was scared to learn how to drive.
That's fair.
You got your license what?
The day I turned 16. That was all I wanted to do on my 16th birthday. I was like, I don't want to be dependent on anyone else ever again because, like, I had a lot more places that I wanted to go than my mom was able or willing to take me. And I was like, peace out. I need to be independent. I'm out of here. Deuces.
Do you want to hear my terrible license story?
Yeah.
Okay, so I was walking to work at the time, and I was living in oh crap, don't put that in there.
Okay.
I gotta be a little better. Okay, so I was working at a Walmart.
Uh-huh.
I was doing asset protection where I apprehended shoplifters and stuff. I've had a really interesting job set throughout my years. And it was right around that time that the girl was murdered in Target in the parking lot. Do you remember that, how that happened?
I think so, yeah.
So my mom freaked out and she's like, you need to start driving. And I was like, yeah, I probably need to start driving. Because I had always been really nervous and really just didn't have the incentive to learn how to drive before then. And she didn't really offer to teach me ever.
Okay, yeah.
We went out driving once, I think, when I was 16, and she made me mad, and I stressed her out, and so it never happened again.
That was very similar to my experience learning to drive.
Yeah, I think everybody has that. But because I don't have a father around, that's where the story ends, is that I just didn't learn how to drive until I was on my own. So my friend Maddie, shout out to Maddie if you're listening, decided that she was going to teach me to drive. So she takes me out, and we do one lesson real quick, and she goes, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're just going to take you to the driver's license place, and you'll try to get a license, and whatever they tell you you need to work on, that's what I'll go over with you a bunch.
Okay.
So I'm like, great, okay, sounds like a plan. So she takes me driving once and kind of goes over some things. I'm like, sure, okay, cool. So I go into the driver's license place, and I take my written test, and I pass, and then I go and I do the driving test, and I pass.
Oh, okay. That makes me so nervous about the kind of people on the road.
And I was like, what? And they're like, yeah, you passed, you're fine. And I was like, I passed? Okay. So the next day, my mom's like, okay, you got to go get a car now. So my boyfriend at the time was working for a dealership.
Okay.
And he said, hey, you can come in and use my friends and family discount. I decided to buy new, which I'll never do again. Never buy a new car.
Yeah, same.
So I went in and I did all the application and everything, and I got approved, and he gives me the keys to my car, and I immediately start bawling because I didn't know where I lived.
Oh, no.
So here I am in the dealership, brand new car in my hand, and I didn't know where I lived to drive home. And also, there were highways, and I hadn't really been on a highway yet.
Yeah.
Minus the driving test for just like a second.
Yeah.
So I was a little freaked out, so I cried, and then he had to drive me to my house and have a different salesman follow me with my new car. And my new car sat in front of the house I was living in with my 3 male roommates at the time. And it just sat there because I wouldn't drive it anywhere. I was so discouraged after going to the dealership and getting a car and freaking out because I didn't know where I lived, because what a basic thing to know in life, and I had no idea. Like, I knew my address. Like, you got to remember, this is pre-GPS. We're talking like, this is back in MapQuest printout days.
Yeah.
So my car just sat in front of the house for days and days and days, and it was going on about 2 weeks when my roommate Cookie got pretty drunk, and he's like, you need to take me to McDonald's. So I'm like, whatever. So him and my other roommate, Ross, at the time, they would have me do their late night food runs for them, where they'd make me like take them out for fast food and drive through the drive-through and come back to the house. But I noticed every time Cookie had me take him out in the middle of the night for drunk food, I was not drinking, by the way. I've always been not the biggest drinker ever. So I noticed every time he had me take him to McDonald's or Taco Bell or anywhere, he would have me go a different route every time.
Oh, yeah.
And then I learned that's how Cookie was trying to teach me how to drive. I think a lot of times he faked being drunk and that he wanted food specifically so he could teach me how to drive and teach me where I lived.
That's pretty sweet.
Isn't that sweet?
And
I didn't figure this out until like years later. I started noticing we were going different routes, but as I got older, I realized he didn't want me being unsafe and he wanted me driving. So he started teaching me where I lived by doing that. And I noticed that a lot of times he'd get food, it'd just be like $1 a menu item or something. Like, not a big deal. So
good guy, Cookie.
Isn't that sweet?
That's really sweet.
Yeah. So that's how I learned how to drive.
Nice. That's awesome.
I am having like the biggest breakout ever right now.
Are you?
Yeah, I don't know what's with the weather and the skin and I'm trying to eat healthier, so maybe my body just hates me because it's like, if you don't give me pizza, I'm going to break you out. I don't know.
I mean, yeah. No, I've been having a lot of and I learned that they actually have a term for it now, maskne.
Yes, okay, maybe that's it, because it is all right where the mask would be.
Yeah, my chin was like hella broken out, and I had like the N95, but it was the more like the contractor style.
Uh-huh.
It was like the very tight seal, that has like the straps above and below your ears.
Mm-hmm.
And I was noticing, especially where the straps connected, I had like really big, deep acne. And I struggle with my skin a little bit in general. And I have very sensitive skin to where it's like it'll break out in a flash.
What's up, baby girl? I can help you with your skin concerns. You tell me what your problem is, I will recommend the best product for you and where to get it for super cheap.
Part of it is the consistency, because I struggle with the routine of it. I am a huge self-sabotager when it comes to it. Once I actually take care of it, it's pretty forgiving. But if I don't, and then I'm hormonal or stressed, which is always,
Sweetie, you just need a good micellar water.
That's what I use, and that's honestly my godsend.
And then just rinse it.
Yep, that's pretty much my godsend. But yeah, no, so the mask was not a good move, and I have switched masks, and I'm having a lot better of a time.
Yeah, I noticed after I was doing standardized patient work that I was getting it pretty bad. And I think you're right. I think it's the mask. So I started doing the Meissner water like halfway through my day, and then just rinsing the bottom half of my face because no one's going to see it anyway once the mask goes back on. And that was helping, but I just had forgot to do that when I'm going grocery shopping or anything else that requires a mask, which is everyday life now.
Yep. Oh, before we dive into our topics, I want to give a shout out to another podcast.
Hell yeah! Shout out!
So I was actually a guest host on this podcast this week. It's called Sweet as Honey. They are on Instagram at sweetashoney.love, and you can find them in most places that you get your podcasts. I just wanted to shout them out because Allison and Tiffany are the hosts, and they are fabulous. We had a wonderful conversation about activism and Black Lives Matter and moving forward in America. So I just wanted to give them a quick shout. They were super supportive of our podcast and of me, and so I just wanted to give them a little love right back, because as podcasters, I think that's kind of what we do here.
Absolutely. Well, go check out Sweet as Honey.
Definitely.
Let me fill your brain with some crazy cool time slips.
Oh, okay. I have wanted to do time slips for a while, so I'm glad you beat me to the punch, because I for sure would have done this.
Okay, well, I'm not going to forbid you from doing it, because I would love to hear more time slips. I can't get enough of them, and because I love them so much and I love the variety, this is kind of going to be an abbreviated Jessie version. So I'm not going to go super in depth with just one or two. I'm going to give you a nice little sprinkling, because I mean, why not travel to the most places in time we can in a brief amount of time, right?
I wish I had snacks right now. I just have like half of my cocktail left. I like want a little kid like cuddle up and have you tell me this story.
You want to cheese it?
I would love some freaking Cheez-Its.
Just pretend to take a Cheez-It.
Okay. Everyone at home, take a Cheez-It. ASMR.
Pass them around.
Crunch, crunch, crunch.
Okay, I'll prevent that.
Oh, yeah, that Cheez-It love. All right, tell us some time slips.
All right, you're going to fast forward through me swallowing this Cheez-It, and we're just going to pretend like I went right into it.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about time slips, slipping in time, slipping in time. We're going to talk about time slips. Oh, no, I fell through time. Okay.
I like how you had a little Blue's Clues vibe there.
So basically, let me just start over. You messed me up.
I know, I always do.
You sabotage me right as I start these.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, a time slip is a paranormal phenomenon in which a person or a group of people travel through time via unknown means. As with all paranormal phenomenon, the objective of reality of such experiences are kind of disputed. But I'm going to tell you some of the top 5 time slips that I found kind of interesting. Okay, so on January 2nd, 1950, a cocktail party was being held about 10 miles away from the small town of Britchin.
Okay.
The party was attended by Miss E.F. Smith, who was a lady that was about 55 years old, who was a resident in the village of Lytham under Duncan Hill. Now, according to her account, she left the party late, having consumed an unspecified quantity of delicious cocktails, so she was probably a little tipsy. Driving conditions were extremely poor, so she probably shouldn't have been driving. It was pitch dark, and there was a slight dusting of snow that had been followed by rain, so icy, which is not a good thing to be driving. So now we're driving in ice, we're driving in snow, we are driving pretty tipsy with some cocktails, which
always
we do not
recommend.
A
designated driver.
So she's 2 miles outside of Brechin, and her car skids into a ditch. Big surprise, right? So there she was. And in her own accounts, she insists that there was no question of her skid having been due to her fainting or other lapse of unconsciousness, nor had she been injured in any way or hit her head. So, a tipsy lady here saying that she wasn't injured when this happens.
Right.
So she has to abandon her car because she can't get it out of the ditch. And she decides that she's just going to walk a little bit on foot. Her home was about 8 miles away.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I could walk 8 miles in the snow. How about you?
I would choose not to very thoroughly. That's a hard pass.
Yeah.
Like, even if I could, okay, like, even if I could drunkenly, no. Like, sober me would prefer to not walk 8 miles in the snow. Drunk me's just gonna sleep in my car. Like, it's just not gonna happen.
Sober me's just gonna sleep in the car.
Fair, yeah.
So when she was about a half a mile from the first houses of Lytham Village, the time was getting on. It was probably about 2 a.m.
Okay.
So she's walking down this road, and she's kind of peering ahead into the distance, and she sees this group of lights moving. And as she walked on, she gradually saw that the lights kind of resolved themselves into a shadowy group of figures carrying flaming torches.
Oh, no.
Now, in America, that'd be some scary-ass shit to see.
Uh-huh.
So here's a direct quote from her. They were obviously looking for their own dead. The one I was watching, the nearest one, would bend down and turn a body over, and if he didn't like the look of it, he just turned it back on its face and went on to the next one. There were several of them. I suppose they were going to bury them. Mrs. Smith had long come to the conclusion that she had somehow witnessed a group of warriors of the late 17th century, circa 685 AD.
Oh, no.
Do you hear
I do, but it's fine. You hear sirens here and weird bombs and stuff. No, like, it was weird because you only mentioned the people with torches, not the bodies on the ground that they're just, like, randomly flipping over. Like, cool, torches are bad, but, like, dead bodies are worse.
That's how it was revealed to me, so I just thought I conveyed
it. Man, okay.
So the next is the Oklahoma White Building time slip. A white Ford pickup pulled into a cattle pasture near Ponca City, Oklahoma in early fall of 1971, and they stopped at the gate. There were 3 people working for a cattle feed distributor, and they were sent to this remote area to pick up a feeder. Their names were Carl, Mark, and Gordon. Okay. Now, what they found there kept them quiet about the situation for 41 years.
Oh.
We opened the gate, which was barbed with wire and no lock and enter, said Carl. We went on the property, which was covered with grass, up to over the hood of the truck. They drove through the tall grass to the tank that sat close to this red barn, and they got out of the truck. We realized that the tank was almost half full and too heavy to load, Carl said. We decided to leave and drove around to the red barn, where we saw a large 2-story white house with no lights in front of us. So the 3 men drove back to the cattle feed company, and the boss said that he'd drain the tank and they could pick it up tomorrow. They went to the location to retrieve the tank the next night. This time, we decided to go through the old white big house and brought our shotguns. They drove onto the property over the path, and they drove through the grass the day before and loaded the tank. They then pull around to the barn towards the house. And what they saw there will be burned into their memories and yours forever. It was no longer there, Carl said. We walked up the hill to where it stood, and there was no sign of demolition, no foundation, nothing at all. What we all seemed to witness the night before was no longer there. We have talked to each other for years, but none of us can begin to explain it.
That's wild, dude.
Now, there was another one while I was doing this research that I thought was pretty amazing that I want to know where I found it. I should have saved it. I did not. So this one might be a little butchered, but it reminds me of this one. And I'll try to find the full information on this and convey it at a future time in the podcast. Mm-hmm. Perhaps when we do round 2 of time slips. But there was a man who was driving and his car wasn't working, and it was a really bad storm, and he was on this port. So he goes to this boat that's docked, and he asks if he can use the man's telephone. And the man says, come on in. So the guy comes in, and he has a red scarf on, and he hangs up his scarf on this peg near the door of the ship. Well, he starts getting really weird vibes from this guy. The ship's really weathered. The guy's just acting kind of off, and he gets freaked out, and he decides to just leave without further explanation. So he leaves the ship, goes back to his car, and he's able to get repairs or get AAA to come out or something. Mm-hmm. So he goes on his way, and then the next day he's driving by that port again, and he notices right where that ship was, there's a wreck, and it's the exact same ship. And so he's freaking out, and he tells his friend about this that's in the car with him. Wow. So they just decide, okay, well, let's check it out. And when they walk into the ship, because they're still a little bit exposed, hanging on the door with a peg is his red scarf.
Whoa! I don't love that.
Right? Right? Isn't that?
Oh, that's wild.
I'm gonna get the details for that one. I know, right? I want to find the full details on that one and do that because it's great. But now you know the gist of it.
That's such a specific detail that, like, okay, right. Maybe like somehow I subconsciously the wreck was there, but like the red scarf makes it so real. Yeah, and researching time slips, the thing about them is they're very hard to prove. Yeah. Because not a lot of people end up with evidence from them. Mm-hmm. There is one that I want to do in great depth that there is a photo from. Ooh. But I want to give you guys a great overlook of what time slips are, and then we'll do that at a future date. So the next one we're going to do, I'm going to call Liverpool Bold Street. Ooh. So in July of 1996, a man and his wife, Frank and Carol, were visiting Liverpool's Bold Street area for some shopping. They're at Central Station when they decide to split up. Carol decides to go to Dylan's bookshop to browse the new paperbacks that came in, and Frank decides to go to HMV to look for a CD he wanted. Now, I don't know what either of those stores are other than, say, a bookstore and a CD store back when people still bought CDs. Yep. So as he walks up this incline near the post office and a cafe building that led towards Bold Street, he suddenly notices that he had entered a strange, what he would call, oasis of quietness. So suddenly, a small box van that looked like it was something out of the 1950s sped across his path and honked its horn as it narrowly missed him. So he jumps back and he notices the name on the van's side, Kaplan's. So he looks down and notices that there's a confused policeman looking at him and just witnessed this event. So the off-duty policeman crossed the road and saw that Dylan's bookstore now had Crips written over its entrances. He's pretty confused and he looked... Like dead body Crips or like Bloods and Crips?
Cripps. Okay. I'm assuming this story makes a lot more sense if you're from London. Yeah. So he's confused and he looks in to see not the books, but a store full of women's handbags and shoes. Now this is kind of weird since his wife is just going into the store, right? So one second it's a bookstore, next second he's looking in after her and it's women's handbags and shoes. He looks around and he realizes that people are dressed in clothes that appeared to be from the 40s. Suddenly, he spots this young girl in her early 20s, and she's dressed in kind of a line-colored sleeveless top. The handbag she was carrying was a popular brand name on it, which reassured the policeman that maybe he was still partly in 1996. It was a paradox, but he was relieved, and he followed this girl into the Cripps store. As the pair went inside, Frank watched in amazement as the interior of the building completely changed in a flash. We probably have to take that part out. We don't have the rights to that.
I know. And this has happened before, and we both sing it very dramatically, and I have to take it out. I think you should change your ringtone to us singing Redbone by Childish Gambino.
Could do that. Okay. Yeah, we're going to have to take all that out.
Stay woke. Oh, I think we can sing it. I just think we can't, because that's not copywritten. I
don't think we can.
Me singing badly is free game, man. Because if you sing it badly,
in Germany,
it's not recognizable as that.
Do you think if someone tried to sue us for that, we could say that technically you were in Germany, so they'd have to go through a German court?
I guess.
I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Anyways.
So Frank watches in amazement as the interior of the building completely changes in a flash to that of Dylan's bookshop of 1996. The girl turned to leave, and Frank gasped, like you would, and he grabbed the girl's arm to attract attention and said, "Did you see that?" She replied, "Yeah, I thought it was a clothes shop. I'm going to look around, but it's a bookshop."
Whoa! So she, like, saw it first?
Well, I think she saw it from the street and thought it was a closed store, too. Goes in, boom, it's a bookstore all of a sudden.
Oh,
but
it
seems like she's very nonchalant about it.
Right. I don't feel like I'd be that chill.
But maybe, from this girl's perspective, maybe she was walking in the door right as it had changed, so maybe she's, like, looking down at something. Or you know how when you walk into a store, sometimes your attention's elsewhere for a moment?
Right.
Maybe she just walked in, and in the moment it flashed, she didn't see everything change. Maybe she just looks up and it's a bookstore. She's like, oh.
That's trippy.
I know, that's a cool one. So let me tell you a little bit about the Vanishing Hotel. So, this is a really widely publicized case, and it took place in October of 1979, and it was even described in the ITV television series Strange But True. So it concerns the Simpsons and the Grisbys, two English married couples driving through France, and they were en route to a holiday in Spain. Let's try that again. Okay.
It's all right. I was super thrown off. I was like, the Simpsons? Like Homer and Bart?
So they're on their way to have a nice little vacation in Spain. They claimed that they stayed overnight at a curiously old-fashioned hotel and decided to break the return journey at the same hotel, but they were unable to find it again. So photographs taken during their stay were missing from the negative strips when the pictures were developed.
Oh.
They later find out that it wasn't there anymore.
I hate this. No, like, that's a legitimate thing. Like, here in Germany, especially the village I live in, like, I'm sure, like, when I go to Berlin, when I've been to Nuremberg and Munich, like, things feel a little bit more modern. But, like, where I live, I am, like, 5 seconds away from a time slip at any time. Like, most of the architecture here, I think our village was, like, has been a city since, like, either 15 or 1620 something. Like, everything, the architecture all looks the same. Like, sometimes I go down a street and, like, if there weren't modern stuff on the side of the road, like, I'd be like, yeah, no, I'm still in the 1700s. So I'm, like, constantly thinking, like, I could be in a time slip any moment over here.
I want you to be in a time slip so you can report back to it. And part of the reasons I wanted to do time slips is because through my research, I found out a lot of them take place in places like France and England and places that still have a lot of history going on.
Yeah.
The ones from the U.S. are, I don't want to say they're not as good because they're still good, but they usually involve like someone getting lost in the woods or going on a hunting trip in the woods, and then they cross a Native American with a lantern.
Right.
Or, they'll see a Civil War soldier.
You definitely feel
it's
a lot more
history, but it's not as old.
Yeah.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
No, 100%. Like, I lived my whole life until last year in the States, and, like, I've been to older parts of the States. I've been to Civil War stuff, and, like the Southeast, like New Orleans and Charleston. Like, I've seen the oldest parts of America. It doesn't lay a freaking finger to anything over here. It just can't.
Right? You're just submerged. You are submerged.
You are.
In the U.S., we tear down our history in places like England and France and Germany. They keep their history, and I think that's an astounding thing. Plus, we're a pretty young country, but the history that was before us, unfortunately, we destroyed. So.
We have absolutely obliterated. Well, and part of it, too, is that if you look at what was trendy around the era that the United States was born, it was all very much wooden structures, whereas here you have more solid structures that withstand the test of time because that's what people were using in the 1500s and prior. And, I mean, you don't have a lot of the log cabins, et cetera, that the United States had just by virtue of those not being very steadfast structures.
That's true, too. So one of the best known and earliest examples of a time slip was reported by two English women, Charlotte Moberly and Eleanor Jourdain. And they were the principal and vice principal of St. Hugh's Oxford College. And this is a really interesting one. So I took some really brief notes on this, and I'm going to fill you in from some kind of my remembrance of this.
Okay.
But they did go on to write a whole book about their experience. So they were walking through the gardens of Petit Trianon at Versailles,
Okay.
And all of a sudden they look around and they notice there are these ladies wearing these opulent outfits with their hairs done in the powdered wigs. And as they continue on, they're thinking, oh, okay, maybe there's some reenactment going on or something like that. And they walk past a woman who was painting. Well, in a flash, everything disappears. And they're standing there and they're looking at the empty gardens and they realize, holy crap, we traveled back in time. They believe that the woman that was painting was Marie Antoinette because she often liked to paint at that particular spot of the Petit Train.
That's fucking cool.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
And they went on to write a book where they disguised their names because they didn't want their identities to come out because they thought people would think they were crazy. Back when they were in charge of this college, it's already a time where, you know, a lot of women might not be necessarily working, so...
Yeah, I was impressed to see that, like, or to hear that they had such high positions. Like, that's so dope.
All of a sudden, boom, everything's gone. They're in an empty garden, and they realize what just happened.
Damn.
And to be with someone to confirm that.
Right. Because a lot of times I hear that it's, like, late at night and they're alone, and I'm like, okay, were you just, like, tired and dozing off, or, like, was it something legit? And when you have someone else with you to corroborate, I think that makes it so much more impactful.
Oh, absolutely. So that concludes my kind of brief rundown of time slips. However, I did want to bring a little something bonus to the table today.
Yes.
Because I get archaeology updates whenever like a cool discovery's been made. I'll get a text message or like a little notification that pops up and it's like, hey, this, you know, you flagged archaeology on Google News or whatever. So there was a discovery that was made 5 hours ago. 6 hours ago now, my bad. That I thought was kind of cool, and I thought maybe I could help break this news here. So, an Iron Age murder victim was unearthed outside of London today, 6 hours ago.
Oh, shit.
The skeleton of a man was thrown face down into a ditch with his hands bound behind him.
That's fascinating.
So he was unearthed just outside of London, and he may have been the victim of an Iron Age murder or execution, though the archaeologists aren't really positive how he died, because he's just been unearthed now.
Yeah.
His strange burial has them suspecting foul play was involved more than 2,500 years ago.
Wow.
So his hands were found together and trapped beneath his pelvis. Though any bindings have now rotted away, they were still in the correct position that you would assume someone would have, having been bound. He didn't have a grave, and they found no signs of a coffin. And here's a direct quote. He seems to have had his hands tied, and he was face down at the bottom of the ditch, said archaeologist Rachel Wood. Wait a second. Is that like the movie star Rachel Wood?
No, that's Evan Rachel Wood.
Oh, good call. Okay.
Yeah.
So she led the excavation from a very high-speed rail developer, HS2.
Okay.
There aren't many ways that a skeleton could end up that way other than to say that they were probably killed and thrown.
Yeah.
So the scientists are now examining the skeleton to learn more about the man's death, and there were some pottery fragments found in a ditch around them that could help kind of pin down when exactly he died. Mm-hmm. They assumed that he could have been struck across the head with a heavy object, and they're looking for marks on the back of the skull that could possibly confirm that. She went on to say if he was stabbed, you could find a blade marks on the ribs, so we're hoping to find something like that to tell us how he died. But how about that? I got to break some news today.
That's super cool. And I'm also super excited to hear that the lead archaeologist was a woman. Like, yes, girls in STEM, let's go.
Heck yeah. That's you know what I would do if I ever got, like, rich? I would seriously fund a ton of archaeological digs, and I would just go hang out.
Oh, yeah. No, one of my friends is an archaeologist. Hey, Amy, if you're listening. And, like, she's badass.
What? Wait, you have an archaeologist friend?
Yeah.
And you're just telling me now?
Yeah.
When we have a whole podcast where I specifically made a segment because I love archaeology.
Do you want me to talk to her and see if she'd like
Yes!
to? Okay.
I want you to talk to her. I want her to hook me up with an archaeologist to date. I want her to be my new best friend. I want to hear all of her stories. I want to have her over and we can glue pottery together.
She's incredible. I cannot talk highly enough about my girl Amy. So yes,
where is she in Germany?
No, she's okay. Hold on, sidebarring. So we met on Twitter through our mutual love of Hamilton.
Uh-huh.
And we got to talking, we follow each other, whatever, and we like get to chit-chatting, and it's like, oh yeah, you're cool, whatever, we have similar interests. And so we both ended up in Puerto Rico at the same time while Hamilton was going on down there. And so we're like, yeah, cool, like I'm gonna finally meet up with my online friend. And so we meet up at this little like food truck lot, and we're chatting, and I'm wearing one of my Kansas City hats, as I always am. And she's like, holy shit, you're from Kansas City? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, dude, I'm from Overland Park. Like, we live seriously an hour apart. We were from an hour apart. Then we come home and we're just like, yeah, let's get coffee every couple weeks or every month or so. And it's just like how we met online and then met in a completely different country. And then we're like, oh shit, like
this story makes me hate you so much right now.
I'm like, oh,
because
shit,
you've had this person and the person's near to me. And I've never gotten to meet them. Okay, look, Amy, if you're listening to this, we're getting lunch. Screw Ruin Germany. We're going to have a great time. I'll talk Hamilton with you. I need to watch it still, but I will get on that.
I think she may be out doing some archaeology stuff right now, or I'm not sure. I need to check in with her because her Instagram has been like wild lately. Anyways, yeah, I will hook you guys up.
Send me her Instagram.
Okay.
I'm so fucking pissed at you.
I need to catch up with her anyways because it's been a minute since we've talked. But yeah, she's fantastic.
You also need to, you need to redeem yourself right now. What did you bring today?
Okay.
Appease me. As I rage eat more Cheez-Its.
All right, let me get my very fancy tablet out and like.
Do you also know my dream guy and you're just holding out on me here? Like, what the hell?
Your dream guy. I thought your dream guy was a magician.
God damn it, no. No. I would like to have sex with a magician.
Oh, okay.
Because I just think that could be a weirdly unique experience. But not like you know when you think of magicians, not like a tacky magician. But like a sexy magician.
I don't think of magicians, and I don't think of them as sexy. That's your kink. But hey, no kink shaming.
No.
Life.
Look. Magicians are not known to be sexy, okay? They're not sexy people. But there are a few out there that really are kind of cute. They're usually the ones that get paid really high and have like Netflix specials and stuff.
Just
like
say
comedy
you want to fuck Chris Angel.
No. Not presently.
Not presently, maybe
not presently.
A couple years
and
ago.
That's just like, so no, my dream guy is not a magician. I would never want to be with a magician. It's just like, hey.
An archaeologist. Okay.
Yes!
All right.
Yes!
All right.
Yes!
Okay.
That makes puns.
All right. Well, archaeologists, you can find us at supposedlypod on Instagram and slide into those DMs for Jessie.
Please.
All right.
So alone.
So today I have a ghost story for you.
Oh, yay. Okay.
All right. So today I'm going to talk to you about the Bell Witch.
Ooh.
Do you know this story?
I've heard the term the Bell Witch.
Okay. So
I'm not really familiar with the story. Is this where we get the Tooth Fairy from?
No.
Well, then I don't know.
Okay.
But I assume it's kind of like the Blair Witch and kind of inspired it.
There's some threads that, kind of tie in, but it's gotten a couple of its own.
It's just a guess, not knowing anything.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So we're going to transport ourselves back to 1804. And we're going to
burn us the stake if we do that.
Yeah. Time slip back to 1804, maybe. So.
Okay.
We're going to head down to North. Rewind. For those that have watched Hamilton.
Time slip.
Time slip. All right, so we're in 1804 now, and we are in North Carolina, where Mr. John Bell is going to move his family to Robertson County in Tennessee.
And kind of nice here, but a little racist.
Highly racist at 1804, yeah.
Well, yeah, of course, but you know.
And so when they get to Tennessee, they're going to buy about 320 acres of farmland along the Red River.
Do we know how much that would go for then versus now?
Probably a shit ton, both in then money and today money. I'm not sure. I didn't look up the inflation on that. So
a lot of land.
Yeah. So they live there for like a decade, and life's pretty chill. They settle in. John becomes a deacon at their Baptist church. Life's good. The family attains some wealth. So this would be a pretty boring story if everything stayed that nice.
They obtained some wealth? Girl, they had some wealth.
Well, but like their farming actually becomes like really successful, and they kind of become a fixture in the community.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So they come from like, yeah, we're farmers, to like, yeah, we're like land barons essentially.
We're farmers.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And he gets kind of a position in the church, and so they're, you know, the quote pillar of the community. And
I hate that phrase. I've always hated that phrase.
Yeah. So everything's super chill until the late 1800s, when their neighbor Benjamin Batts is suffering from a chronic illness. And in order for the family to survive, the Batts have decided that they need to sell some of their land because he's not able to work the fields as much anymore. They're like, yo, we need some money. I guess we got to sell some of our land. So at this
So they didn't go bat shit crazy?
Hey. Save that pun for later.
Why did you turn into the Fonz?
Hey. I added finger guns that time for those who couldn't see.
So they decided to sell the land.
Yeah. And so at this point, his wife Kate is handling a lot of the business of the farm because he's so chronically ill. And she's kind of known around town for being this feminist, or in 1804 speak, or sorry, late 1810 speak, witch, because she's like this strong, independent woman who, you know, her husband's down, so she just takes over. And so they're like, oh, Kate Batts is clearly a witch because she's a bad bitch.
She can function without a man.
Yeah.
And burn
the bitch. And so it turns out Kate's actually kind of distantly related to the Bells. She's like a niece of Lucy the wife's. So Mr. John Bell decides that he's going to buy some of the land from the Batts, but he steeply undercuts them. He totally takes advantage of Benjamin's illness, and he's like, you need to unload some of this land, and I want to buy some of this land. And just like,
what? I'm not going to pay your asking price. Here's my final offer. It's way lower than what you deserve. Yeah, got it.
But also take it, because what's your other option? You will starve.
Nothing. Yeah.
He also, super horrible, buys a young slave girl, but decides to leave her with her mom because, like, he doesn't want to do the labor of raising her. So he leaves this young woman with her mother for the Batts to raise, but, like, owns her. Like, a lease, I guess? Yeah. So when he goes to claim this young woman who is now reached maturity, the Batts are like, yo, we raised her. She's worth a lot more. And they get into this altercation with John Bell because they're like, you have made us go through the cost of raising a person and feeding her, housing her. I mean, even though she's a slave and they're treating her probably like trash, like it still costs money to grow a human being up. So Kate Batts is pissed at this point, and so she curses John Bell. So here's a disclaimer. This legend has gotten really messy over the last couple hundred years because of like the game of telephone that happened of like, oh, here's the legend to your kid, here's the legend to their friend, here's the legend. And so it's kind of denigrated, and there's a lot of different versions. And actually there are Bells and Batts still alive in that area and kind of through a lot of the South and Midwest that still exist, and they all kind of tell a little bit of a different story, but they're very involved in trying to keep this story alive. And there have been like A&E programs and like Travel Channel programs and stuff on this story. So if you want a more authentic version from kind of, you know, the mouth itself, like definitely check those out. And I'm just giving the small amount of research that I have been able to acquire. But if you want like a super accurate account, check out those programs. But yeah, like, so there's a couple of different versions. Like I said, some people say that there's no evidence that the Batts actually ever owned slaves due to being too poor to afford them. Other accounts state that Kate and Benjamin weren't married, but that Kate was actually married to some dude named Fred. So there's a couple different, like, Fred, okay. Yeah. So there's a couple different, like, sticking points where it's like, maybe this isn't super accurate. But anyways, back to the story. So now we're in 1817, and John Bell's out hunting one day in the woods, and he sees a strange creature, later describing it as a dog with a rabbit head, which I feel is like just a weird dog, but okay. So he shoots it, and it falls, and so then he goes to see, like, what it is, but it's vanished, which, like, maybe it just got up and ran away, and he didn't actually kill it because he sucks at hunting. I don't know. But this is where the haunting starts to really pop off. Like, it was... Pop it off. Yeah, like, this moment of seeing this thing in the woods starts a whole new world for the Bell family.
Part of the story is the corn and you are the microwave. Pop that sucker.
Pop, pop. I've been watching too much Community. So the family starts to hear strange sounds in the walls, such as scratching and gnawing, which could have been explained by like the large pear trees outside the house or just rodents. I mean, this is the 1800s.
I'm sorry, do pear trees climb in your walls and chew at them?
Well, no, like outside, like brushing on the walls. Like that if there was a wind, that it would like
Fair.
scratch. Yeah.
You made it sound like the pear trees come inside the walls and chew at stuff.
I'm a pear tree.
Oh, it's a pear tree haunting.
It's a pear tree.
I think we found this week's episode title. A pear tree haunting.
I think so.
Time slips in a pear tree. Time slip in a pear tree.
So they would hear like a rat gnawing at the bedposts, which I guess would be pretty common in the 1800s when you like don't have the building materials that we have today. Yeah. And so they would like wake up and they would turn on a candle. They'd light a candle. My privilege, 2000.
Your bougie is showing.
Turn on the candle. So they would light a candle to investigate the sound. And as soon as the candle was lit, the sound would stop. And they're like, okay, like whatever. So they'd put the candle out or turn it off, depending.
They'd turn off the candle.
They would turn off the candle. And then the gnawing would move from room to room. So, like, someone else would hear it. A different kid in the family would hear it. Until it had the whole house woken up. And they were all like, dude, what the frick is this, rat sound? But that wasn't enough. Soon they started to hear larger animals scratching. It almost had like a dog. When a dog is, like, trying to nest or, it's digging up stuff. They would also hear chairs falling over, stones hitting the floor, and the ghostly constant the dragging of chains.
Oh, that's such a classic. How come we don't hear that with modern hauntings?
Right?
I haven't heard of a good chain drag since Scrooge,
Yeah, good old Jacob Marley. Yeah. So members of the family would be like tucked in bed, going to sleep, and then just like randomly their feet would get uncovered. Yeah, so like the covers would just get yoinked off their toes, which I'm not a fan of. Yoink. Yoink. So little Elizabeth Bell, who's one of the daughters of John and Lucy, was the greatest victim of these disturbances. She began to complain of her hair being pulled and twisted and eventually being slapped across the face and just hit in general. Her parents discredited the complaints, but then the next day, so they're like, that's bullshit, Elizabeth, whatever. So the next day, she literally had handprints across her body, and she was like, I'm being slapped. And, like, you could see, like, red indent where she'd been hit.
Man. Now, did they believe her then?
So there's some speculation that this was all abuse done by her father, but that's not credible. So, I mean, maybe because hitting your kids was, like, 115% acceptable back then.
Yeah.
But that's the story. So, at this point, John tells his neighbor and friend, James Johnson, about the crazy shit that's happening. So Mr. Johnson and his wife come over to investigate. And as soon as night falls, the weird stuff starts to happen again. So the adults all start to ask this entity questions like how many horses are in the yard, how many people are there, and the answers come in knocks, which are always correct.
Ooh, spooky.
Yeah.
Zach Baggins does that sometimes.
He does. He loves that maneuver. So lights began to appear in the yard, and then rocks, stones, bricks, and other objects were thrown at the family members.
That's not good. Did anybody get hurt?
Not that I found, but I mean...
Okay. But it's possible if you're getting a rock chucked at your head.
I mean, poor Elizabeth has shown up with welts and stuff on her, so...
Right. She's experiencing some stuff.
And then at this point, disembodied voices started to be heard. So one of the folks who was doing this, either Johnson and his wife or the Bells, asked, "What are you?" And the voice responded in a female voice, "I am a spirit. I was once very happy, but I have been disturbed." Ooh. So they tried to figure out what this voice was or who it could be, but it never really talked about itself. And some people who've studied this case believe that it's because it didn't really know what it was.
I mean, it could be, right?
Yeah.
So, it makes sense.
It does, especially if it's like a curse and was sent there, if it's some entity, whatever, that doesn't really have a corporeal form. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. So the voice started to get super chatty, and at this point would quote the Bible and engage in religious and philosophical debate with anyone who would engage with it. And had
women, am I right?
I know. and had such compelling arguments that it rarely lost.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah. It also, this voice had an extreme talent for mimicry and would sometimes recite sermons from multiple churches at once in the pastor's voices.
Oh, that's creepy.
Yeah, and so they'd be like churches from like 13 miles apart, like flanking.
How did they know?
The town.
How did they know that this sermons were happening at different churches?
So I think, like I said, John Bell was a deacon at one of the churches, and I'm sure that all the pastors kind of chatted with each other, and I think it'd be probably pretty easy to figure out if you were that ensconced in the church.
Right. Plus, there's some guys there saying, like, I got a witch in my wall. She said this the other night. Betty Lou could be like, oh, I heard that at church.
Yeah. Yeah. So apparently during this time, Kate, Miss Batts, would throw ragers and singing drunken songs and shout curses, which, like, same.
Yeah, that sounds like a great time.
Can I party with Kate? Around the same time, John Bell started to suffer attacks, which left his tongue swollen and gave him trouble breathing.
That sounds like he was allergic to something.
Yeah, don't eat the shrimp, John.
Yeah, maybe he just had an undiagnosed allergy.
Shrimp, heaven, now! So things got so bad for the Bells that this case actually got some pretty notorious attention. Can I get like some hype up theme music?
Hype up.
Enter human garbage can and future President General Andrew Jackson. So Jackson and some of his bros decide they're going to roll up to the Bell house. And as they start the drive down the long driveway, the wagon wheels get stuck on apparently nothing. They just stop moving. And he has his homies get out and push. And they're slapping the horses.
No wagon for you.
Not going anywhere. And so he shouts, by the eternal boys, it is the witch. And they hear a disembodied voice respond. All right, General, let the wagon move on. I will see you again tonight.
Flat back.
And then the wagon moves freely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I like it.
Apparently a few guys in this company decided that they were witch layers, and they were gassing themselves up about having silver bullets, and here's what I'll do if I see the witch. Oh yeah, well, I'm going to do this. But they are so cocky, i.e. they are men.
They are entitled. I feel like there's an action movie here.
Oh, 100%.
They're entitled. They're out to hunt the witch. It's about to get presidential.
It's like the sequel to Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter.
Which, by the way, that book was amazing, and the movie did not do it justice.
I only saw the movie. I didn't read the book. Maybe I'll do that on my long drive to Berlin this week.
Do it. It's good.
So at this point, they're chilling at the Bell house, and the guys are like, yeah, I got these silver bullets, and I'm gonna, blast this witch bitch. Let's go. Rah. And so one of them, who's like, yeah, my silver bullet's gonna kill her. So they're hyping themselves up, talking around the fire. And the witch's voice was then basically come on then, take your best shot. And this witch layer guy tried to shoot at where the sound came from, and his gun misfired.
Okay, look, if you're trying to shoot at a disembodied voice, probably not going to work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. But, they're macho, they're guys. They know what's up.
Right. So, I feel like if I were an alien or a time traveler, this is exactly the way I'd try to fuck with people.
Oh,
I'm a witch in the tree. Shoot at me. It's a speaker.
Yeah.
And, you don't have those yet.
So the witch is or this voice is no, it's okay. Try again. Shoot me. Hit me. Kill me. And so he's all right, yeah, man. That was weird, right? My gun just, whatever. And
man.
Right. So he tries again to shoot at this disembodied voice. The gun fails twice in a row.
Oh, so he's looking real cool now in front of his bros.
They then
Dude, bros are not impressed.
Not at all. They then hear a solid slapping sound, just slap, slap, slap. Yeah. And the man's chair overturned. He got up off.
He was sitting down?
Yeah.
He was extra cocky. He was going to sit down and shoot it.
I have to imagine it's a man spreading, gun turned sideways.
Yeah, trying to, let me light this rifle first, or whatever you did back then.
Right.
Yeah.
Load my musket. And so he got up off the floor and he began like hooping and hollering and dancing around the room, screaming that something had him by the nose.
Oh, she got your nose.
Is
it bad I'm on the witch's side so far? This is hilarious.
I love the witch. I am so here for the witch.
The witch so far hasn't really done anything bad other than, they're slapping the kid. Okay, that's bad.
Yeah, let's not slap kids. But other than that, fuck anyone who's friends with Andrew Jackson.
It's kind of snarky. I kind of dig it so far, except for the kid slapping. That's not okay.
Yeah. So then this dude, after being made a fool of, his gun misfires twice in front of his bros. He's being drug around by his nose. He just runs away, like arms flailing, towards Nashville, and was never seen again.
Well,
I love. So
that's great.
The rest of them go through the rest of the night, and there's weird gnawing stuff on the bedposts, and they turn on their candles and turn their candles off, and like you do. And the next day, they're like making their coffee.
Turn on and off the candles.
And John Bell's like, oh, General Jackson, like, thank you so much for coming. Do you and your buddies want to stay longer? And Jackson was like, yo, thank you so much for your hospitality, but I'm out of here.
Thanks, no thanks.
And he was later apparently, and all of this is hearsay because in your presidential records, you don't really talk about ghosts and witches or how your friends tried to shoot a witch. But apparently
you should. I feel like that should be disclosed.
But apparently he later said that he would rather, quote, face all of the British Army than stay in that house another moment.
Oh, she owned you.
Literally. All right, so a few years pass, and now Elizabeth, the little girl who was getting the crap slapped out of her, is now a young lady. And her nickname is Betsy, which is pretty cute. So they're still experiencing the haunting, but they're just kind of used to it at this point. And now Betsy is older, and she gets engaged to a guy named Joshua Gardner.
Okay.
This entity will not leave her and her fiance alone, and it like demands that they not get married. Like they'll just be like chilling, and it'll be like,
maybe he's a jerk, and the witch is like, hey, this kid was a jerk once and I beat that out of her. She deserves better than you.
But they'd just be like chilling, probably chaperoned by the witch. And the witch would just be like, don't marry him, don't marry him, don't marry him, don't marry him.
Seems logical to me.
And like it got so bad.
I don't think I'd marry that guy.
Yeah. So at this point, John's health is failing. He starts to suffer from convulsions, and he falls into a deep sleep, like almost a coma, on December 19th, 1820.
Okay, look, if Betty just would have said she wasn't going to marry him, he'd probably be fine. But she tied the witch's hands.
Let's not blame the victim here.
Okay, fair.
This is the same little girl who got the crap slapped out of her for years. She just wants to have a happily ever after. I
know, but I like the snarky witch other than
the
child
beating. So John Jr., John Bell's son, went to the cupboard to get the medicine that was prescribed to his father, but he noticed that the bottle was missing, and in its place was like your quintessential like triple X. You open it and the puff of smoke and a skull comes out, and it was this strange smoky looking vial containing a strange dark liquid. The family sent for the doctor, and the whole time this spirit voice was like, it's useless, don't even bother. I've got him this time, it said. He will never get up from that bed again. And the family was like, okay, what's up with this mysterious vial? And the voice was like, I put it there. I gave old Jack a big dose of it last night while he was asleep, which fixed him. And the next day, John Bell died. And his son John Jr. noticed a horrible smell coming from his mouth that matched the smell from that vial. And they later apparently, and this is like super sad, so I'm sorry, they gave a dropper full of this vial to a cat, and the cat got convulsions and died. I said it's super bad. And so it was 100% poison. So they go to bury.
Okay, look, I was with the witch until she killed somebody.
Yeah, I hear ya. So the next day they're having the funeral, and apparently Kate Batts came to his funeral and was singing drunkenly as they buried him in the family graveyard. She was...
Okay, so they're like, she's a witch.
Yeah, she was thrilled that her plot for revenge from like 10 years ago finally came to fruition. I mean, she played the long game.
Gotcha.
So after his death, this entity seemed to lose most of its interest in the Bell family. Elizabeth began to believe that maybe she and Joshua Gardner might actually be able to get married after all. And so they went through with their engagement, but it turns out that the witch was not through with them yet.
Of course she wasn't.
In
She told her not to
1821,
get married.
Yeah, their engagement comes to a tragic end. Elizabeth and Joshua and a couple other young couples from the area had gone fishing. And it was this great day. They're on the banks of the Red River, just living their best life, when suddenly this huge fish takes Josh's line, or Joshua, I don't know him like that, he's not Josh, Joshua's line, and it jerked it, pulling all into the river, leaping into the air, diving into the bottom, and carrying the fishing pole with it. Those who saw it said the fish was at least 2 to 3 feet long. Almost no one there thought it was an ordinary fish, especially when it returned a short time later, swimming along the surface, still dragging the fishing pole behind it.
It's a cocky fish.
It's a cocky fish, kind of like the cocky witch that we've met.
I know, okay.
So, at this point comes a familiar voice materializing from thin air and repeating again.
Was it from the fish?
I hope so. Please, Betsy Bell, don't have Joshua Gardner, just over and over and over again. When the voice died away, Elizabeth removed her engagement ring and was like, yo, I think I shouldn't marry you. Sorry. The weird fish, he wins.
The fish witch.
Yep, the fish witch wins, and she was convinced that they would never be able to have a peaceful life. Apparently, Gardner knew it too, and he accepted the breaking off of their engagement and moved away from Robertson County to somewhere in West Tennessee, and they never saw each other again.
That's sad.
It is.
Maybe there was a reason?
I mean, it gets sadder because eventually Elizabeth does get married.
Oh, does this guy make it? I'm guessing
and
no.
She gets married to Richard Powell, who was her school teacher when he was an adult man and she was a child.
That's not okay.
No, that's so fucking gross.
Is that even okay by 18 whatever standards?
Oh, 100%.
So.
Yeah.
Ugh,
yeah.
Gross.
Okay. But apparently the witch was cool with this because it didn't oppose their marriage. And Elizabeth Bell lived to be 86 years old. So apparently she was happy after that, quote. So at this point, I mean, the witch's appearances became fewer and fewer. Later in the spring of 1821, it suddenly announced that it was leaving, but it promised to return in 7 years.
Did it come back?
7 years later, things had radically changed at the Bell farm. Most of the children, Elizabeth among them, married, moved away, were kind of doing their own thing. Only some of the younger siblings still lived in the big old house. The spirit's return in February of 1828 was marked by the same knockings and scratchings and banging and gnawing and pulling of the covers and all that jazz. This time, though, the witch only stayed for a short amount of time, and then when Lucy Bell, one of the daughters, died that year, she became quiet again. So maybe she was back for her pound of flesh and dipped out.
Got it and left. Okay.
Yep. So after Lucy's death, no one really wants to live there anymore. And so they kind of just divided the house up among themselves, and it was used for storage for a while and eventually was just torn down. So with the house no longer standing, it's said that the witch retreated into a nearby cave, which has since become a tourist attraction. It's now called the Bell Witch Cave, which
because people go to try to find the witch.
Yeah, which during non-corona times, you can still go and check it out. So many visitors to the cave have reported seeing the figure of a dark-haired woman floating through the cave's passageways. Several people have reported being touched by something. Others have heard more chain dragging on the cave floor.
Okay. Yeah, all right. Look, how do they know she moved into the cave? Was it oh, by the way, here's my change of address?
Yeah, she filed it with the post office. No, I think it's just
I found a cave.
I think it's probably because the chain dragging and they're hearing similar things that the family reported. It's super nearby. I think on the outskirts of their property. Apparently one little boy.
There's just a really bored time traveler living in the back of that cave.
It's all a time slip. So apparently one little boy had a hat snatched off his head and then it flung up 30 feet and landed on a ledge in the cave.
Ooh.
Yeah. There's also apparently a figure of a little girl, which occasionally materializes along U.S. Highway 41, which is one of the borders of the Bell Farm. And more than once, someone's in their car and they think that they've hit this little girl, but then they get out. They're like, "Oh my God, I just killed somebody! Get out!" And nothing.
Oh man, how traumatizing would that be?
So traumatizing. Most importantly.
Yes.
Our boys, Ghost Adventurers, have done an episode at this cave, which I haven't seen yet, but I think that should be our next hang.
And I also feel okay, should we set the rules for it now?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Zach's going to try to provoke it, right?
Of course.
How? What do you think he's gonna call it?
Zach is gonna be.
I bet he's gonna say, "Why don't you come pick on me?"
Oh yeah, Zach's gonna be exactly like Andrew Jackson's homie that was like gun turned sideways in his little chair, like, yeah, bro, I'm gonna shoot you with my silver bullet. Yeah, 100%. Zach's gonna be like spiking his hair, and he's gonna be like, yeah, Ghost, come get some of this. You want some of this? And they're like,
I can't wait. There's gonna be some bad reenactments. I'm all about it.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. But that's the story of the Bell Witch Cave, or the Bell Witch in general.
Well, that's interesting. So I guess if the world ever gets back to normal, maybe go check out that cave.
Yeah.
Find us at supposedlypod@gmail.com. We'd love to hear any stories or encounters you've personally had, or anything you want us to just cover. Or if you just want to say, hey, at least we know someone's listening.
And please, if you have it in your heart, do rate us and review us, because it really does help with the algorithm, which is the magical thing that all digital personalities struggle with.
I'm struggling with the algorithm of life right now.
Legitimately. But thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.
On
Supposedly.